What happens when an undercover boss walks into his own store and freezes after overhearing his cashier's words? Let's dive in to see how a chance encounter revealed an extraordinary secret that would change not just one life, but an entire community. David Chen was not your typical retail executive. At 52, he was the CEO of Quick Stop Markets, a thriving chain of convenience stores that had grown from a modest family business into a regional powerhouse across the Pacific Northwest. When his parents first immigrated to Seattle in the 1980s, they poured their life savings into a single rundown convenience store in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Through countless early mornings and late nights, they transformed that struggling store into a cornerstone of the community. David had watched his parents work tirelessly, his father manning the register while his mother kept the books and stocked shelves. Even as a teenager, he'd spend his afternoons after school helping customers, learning the importance of remembering their names, their usual purchases, and the small details of their lives that made each interaction personal. His father always said, "In this business, we're not just selling products, we're building relationships." 25 years ago, when his parents finally retired, David took over the family store with big dreams and innovative ideas. He modernized the inventory system, expanded the product lines, and gradually began opening new locations. The first expansion was nerve-wracking, a second store just 10 miles away, but it succeeded beyond his expectations, and soon one store became 5, then 15, then 50. Today, Quick Stop Markets boasted over 100 locations across Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. The growth had brought remarkable success. Quick Stop Markets was now a respected name in retail, known for its clean stores, competitive prices, and efficient service. David's office on the 20th floor of a downtown Seattle high-rise offered a stunning view of the Puget Sound, a far cry from the small back room where his parents had counted the day's earnings each night. The company employed over 2,000 people, and their annual revenue had topped $500 million last year. But success had come at a price. As Quick Stop Markets expanded, David found himself spending more time in corporate boardrooms and less time understanding the heart of his business, the stores and people who ran them. Quarterly reports and profit margins told one story, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something essential about the company his parents had built on the foundation of personal connection and community service. The morning meetings with regional managers felt increasingly disconnected from reality. They spoke of metrics, efficiency ratings, and profit margins, but David remembered how his father used to talk about helping an elderly customer carry groceries to their car, or how his mother would keep aside the last loaf of fresh bread for a regular who always came in late after their hospital shift. These were the values that had built Quick Stop Markets, but were they still alive in the company today? Lately, something had been nagging at David's conscience. Employee satisfaction surveys showed decent results, but the comments section revealed an undercurrent of disconnection. "Corporate doesn't understand what we deal with," one employee had written. "We're just numbers to them," said another. These words haunted David, especially when he thought about his father's philosophy of treating every employee like family. Looking out his office window at the bustling city below, David made a decision. PowerPoint presentations and spreadsheets couldn't tell him what he really needed to know. If he wanted to understand what was really happening in his stores, he needed to see it for himself. Not as the CEO, but as someone on the ground level. The idea seemed almost absurd at first, but the more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that it was necessary. Little did David know that this decision would lead to a discovery that would shake him to his core and remind him of what truly matters in business and in life. The plan came together quickly. David would pose as Daniel Chang, a new employee, participating in a company-wide training program. His corporate team initially resisted the idea, citing security concerns and potential risks, but David was determined. He chose store Derb 47, located in a bustling neighborhood of Portland, Oregon. It wasn't their highest-performing location, but something about its recent customer feedback had caught his attention. A mixture of glowing praise for the staff alongside complaints about outdated facilities. To make his transformation convincing, David knew he had to leave every trace of his executive life behind. He traded his tailored suits for worn jeans and faded polo shirts from a local thrift store. His expensive leather shoes were replaced with scuffed work boots. He even traded his luxury apartment watch for a basic digital timepiece he found at a department store. Each item was carefully chosen to build the identity of someone who needed this job, not someone who owned the company. The physical transformation went beyond just clothes. David stopped getting his regular haircut 6 weeks before the planned visit, letting his usually neat salt and pepper hair grow slightly unkempt. He grew out his facial hair, something he hadn't done since college, until he had a modest beard that made him look notably different from his corporate headshots. His wife Jenny, watching this transformation, joked that he looked more like the college student who used to work in his parents' store than the CEO he had become. To make his cover story believable, David spent hours with his HR team crafting a detailed backstory. Daniel Chang was a former office worker who had lost his job during recent tech industry layoffs. He was starting over, trying to rebuild his life from the ground up. The story was close enough to reality that David could speak about it convincingly, drawing from his own experiences of uncertainty and change during the early days of taking over the family business. The hardest part was preparing for the actual work. David hadn't worked a cash register in over 15 years, and the systems had changed significantly. For 2 weeks, he practiced in secret at a training facility in the corporate office basement, learning the new POS system, memorizing current promotions, and studying the employee handbook as if he'd never seen it before. His hands, more accustomed to signing documents and typing emails, had to relearn the rhythm of scanning items and counting change. The night before his first day at store Upper 47, David sat in his hotel room, a modest establishment far different from his usual accommodations. Reviewing his cover story one last time, he'd arranged to stay in Portland for 2 weeks, telling his executive team he was taking a much-needed vacation. Only his wife and 3 trusted members of his senior staff knew his true whereabouts. To everyone else, Daniel Chang was just another new hire in a company that employed thousands. As he laid out his work clothes for the next morning, David felt a mixture of anxiety and excitement he hadn't experienced since those early days of expansion. Tomorrow, he would step into a world he had created but had somehow become a stranger to. He would see his company through new eyes, not from above, but from ground level, where every policy he'd ever approved would have real, immediate consequences. His shift was scheduled to start at 6 a.m. Store Number 47's manager, Sarah Martinez, had been told only that she was getting a new employee through the company's recent initiative to provide opportunities for career changes. David had specifically chosen to arrive during the morning rush, the busiest time of day when there would be less attention paid to a new face trying to learn the ropes. As he set his alarm for 4:30 a.m., David realized that this experiment could change everything. His perspective, his company's direction, maybe even his understanding of the legacy his parents had entrusted him with. What he didn't know was that Store 47 held secrets that would challenge everything he thought he knew about his company and the people who kept it running. The morning air was crisp and dark when David pulled into the employee parking lot of Store 47. He sat in his rented Toyota Corolla, a far cry from his usual Tesla, watching the first employees arrive for their shifts. Each person hurried through the back entrance, clutching coffee cups and pulling on navy blue quick-stop vests. At precisely 5:45 a.m., David took a deep breath, grabbed his newly issued vest from the passenger seat, and joined the morning crew. Sarah Martinez, the store manager, was waiting by the time clock. She was younger than David had expected, probably in her mid-30s, with an energy that seemed to cut through the early morning drowsiness. Her quick-stop vest was impeccably clean, decorated with 5 years of service pins. She greeted David, or rather Daniel Chang, with a firm handshake and a tired but genuine smile. "Welcome to Quick Stop 47, Daniel. First day in retail?" Sarah's eyes were kind but evaluating, taking in his slightly nervous demeanor. David nodded, playing his part. "Lost my office job 6 months ago," he explained, the practiced words feeling strange in his mouth. "Trying something new." Sarah's expression softened with understanding. "Well, we've all got to start somewhere. Let's get you set up." The next hour was a whirlwind of information. Sarah walked him through the store's layout, explaining the morning routine, checking dates on perishables, restocking the coffee station, preparing the hot food display. David absorbed everything with genuine interest, noting how different the store looked from this perspective. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The floor showed scuff marks that wouldn't be visible in corporate photographs, and the back room was cramped with inventory that didn't quite fit the designated storage space. As the morning rush began, Sarah assigned David to shadow Michael Torres, their senior cashier. Michael was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 30s who moved with surprising grace behind the counter. "Watch and learn," Michael said, his voice carrying a hint of what seemed like military precision. "Morning rush is like a combat mission. You've got to stay focused and keep moving." David noticed how Michael handled each customer with efficiency and warmth. He remembered names, asked about family members, and moved with practiced ease between transactions. But it was more than just good customer service. There was something in Michael's manner that spoke of deeper understanding and connection. The morning progressed, and David found himself struggling to keep up with the pace. His fingers fumbled with the register, despite his practice sessions. Each time he made a mistake, Michael quietly corrected him, never showing impatience. "Takes time to get the rhythm," Michael assured him. "Took me a while too, when I first started." Around 9 a.m., the rush slowed enough for David to take in more details about his surroundings. He noticed how Michael kept a small notebook beside his register, occasionally making quick notes between customers. The observation desk that corporate had mandated in all stores was being used to store extra supplies instead of for its intended purpose of loss prevention. The break room's ancient microwave had a series of handwritten instructions taped to it, showing which buttons still worked. But what caught David's attention most was how Michael interacted with certain customers. There was an elderly woman who came in for her morning paper. Michael had it ready before she reached the counter. A young mother with 3 children tried to buy groceries with a card that was declined. Michael smoothly processed an employee discount that David had never heard of in any corporate policy. A teenager counting out change for a coffee received a free pastry that Michael marked as damaged inventory. Just before lunch, while David was restocking the candy aisle, he overheard a conversation that made him freeze. A middle-aged man in worn work clothes was at Michael's register, purchasing basic groceries: bread, milk, peanut butter. "Mike," the man said quietly, "I hate to ask, but has that position opened up yet? The army pension's not stretching as far these days." Michael's response was equally quiet, but clear to David's listening ears. "Not yet, Mr. Rodriguez, but I'm working on something. You know we take care of our own. By the way, those items are covered under the Veterans Program today." The man started to protest, But Michael was already processing the transaction, his fingers moving swiftly over the register keys. David felt his heart pounding. Veterans program? There was no official veterans program at Quick Stop Markets. Was Michael running some sort of scam? Or was there something deeper going on here, something that corporate had never noticed? As he mechanically arranged candy bars on shelves, David realized he had stumbled onto exactly the kind of situation he had hoped to understand by going undercover. But he never expected to discover it so soon. That evening, after his shift ended, David sat in his hotel room with a notepad, writing down everything he had observed about Michael Torres. The veteran's interaction had sparked his curiosity, but it wasn't an isolated incident. Throughout the day, he'd noticed patterns in Michael's behavior that suggested something much bigger was happening at store near 47. Using his secure laptop, David quietly accessed the corporate employee database, looking up Michael's file. The official record was impressive. 5 years of service, consistently high-performance reviews, and numerous customer commendations. But it was his hiring notes that caught David's attention. Michael had been hired through a veteran employment initiative that Quick Stop had briefly run in 2018, a program that had been discontinued due to lack of measurable impact, according to corporate records. The next morning, David arrived even earlier than his scheduled shift, hoping to observe Michael's opening routine. He found the cashier already there, meticulously organizing a small filing cabinet behind the counter. When Michael noticed David, watching, he quickly shut the drawer, but not before David glimpsed what looked like handwritten cards and lists. "You're early," Michael commented, trying to sound casual. "Wanted to learn the opening procedures better," David replied, sensing an opportunity. "Actually, I was curious about something I noticed yesterday. You seem to have a special way with some of the customers." Michael hesitated, studying David's face carefully. After a long moment, he seemed to make a decision. "Look, Daniel," he said quietly, glancing around to ensure no one else was within earshot, "there are things we do here that might not be in the corporate manual, but they matter, really matter." Over the next hour, as they restocked shelves, together, Michael gradually opened up. He explained how, after returning from his third tour in Afghanistan, he had struggled to find his place in civilian life. Quick Stop had given him a chance when many other employers wouldn't. "But I noticed something working here," Michael explained, organizing energy drinks with military precision. "A lot of our regular customers are veterans too, and many of them are struggling." What Michael revealed next made David's hands shake as he pretended to check expiration dates. Over the past few years, Michael had created an unofficial support network centered around store No. 47. He kept track of local veterans who were having trouble making ends meet, helping them with unofficial discounts, connecting them with job opportunities, and sometimes even paying for their groceries out of his own pocket. "Remember Mr. Rodriguez yesterday?" Michael continued, his voice low. 22 years in the service. Now he can barely afford basic necessities on his pension, but he's too proud to accept direct help. So we have our veterans program. It's not real, of course, but it lets him keep his dignity while getting the support he needs. The filing cabinet, David learned, contained careful records of everyone Michael helped, along with a network of local resources and job opportunities. He had even created a subtle signal system. Veterans who needed help would ask about the program, and Michael would know exactly what kind of assistance they required. "Some of the other employees help too," Michael added, nodding toward Sarah, who was working in her office. "The manager looks the other way on some of the discounts. A few regular customers contribute to what we call our community fund. It's not much, but sometimes a few dollars off groceries can mean the difference between eating and not eating for some of these folks." As the morning progressed, David watched Michael's system in action with new understanding. A veteran with PTSD who couldn't handle crowds was quietly ushered to a separate register during busy times. An elderly veteran's wife received free delivery of her groceries through an unofficial arrangement with the store's stockboy, who would drop them off after his shift. Each interaction was handled with dignity and discretion, making it appear like normal store operations to casual observers. The most remarkable part was how Michael had turned store number 47 into an informal community center for local veterans. They would come in not just to shop, but to connect with others who understood their experiences. Michael kept a bulletin board in the break room, with job postings, apartment listings, and support group information, all carefully curated for the veteran community. By the end of his shift, David was overwhelmed by the scope of what he had discovered. This wasn't just about unauthorized discounts or bending corporate rules. Michael had created something profound, a support system that served a vulnerable community in ways that formal programs often failed to do. And he had done it all quietly, efficiently, and without recognition, risking his job every day to help his fellow veterans. The revelation about Michael's secret support network kept David awake that night. In his hotel room, he spread out pages of notes, trying to process everything he had learned. His corporate training told him that unauthorized discounts and modified store policies were serious violations. But his heart and his memory of his father's philosophy about community service told him something very different. The next few days revealed even more layers to Michael's operation. David noticed how the store's damaged inventory numbers were slightly higher than other locations, but always within acceptable corporate limits. Now he understood why. Michael had found creative ways to help veterans in need while staying just within the boundaries of company policies. He documented items as damaged or expired when they were actually given to struggling veteran families. The slightly higher shrinkage rate had never triggered corporate audits because it was so carefully managed. During his lunch break, David struck up a conversation with Lisa Chen, another cashier who had worked with Michael for 3 years. "Mike's got a sixth sense about people who need help," she explained, unaware she was talking to the CEO. "Last winter, we had this veteran come in. Young guy, recently discharged, couldn't have been more than 25. Mike noticed he was wearing the same thin jacket every day, even when temperatures dropped below freezing. Within a week, Mike had connected him with a local veterans support group and found him a job at a warehouse down the street." The store's daily routines took on new meaning as David watched more closely. The coffee station that stayed open a little longer than corporate policy suggested. It served as a meeting point for veterans who needed a warm place and a friendly face during cold mornings. The slightly extended break times that Sarah approved. They allowed employees to listen to veterans who needed someone to talk to. Even the store's layout violations, like the extra chairs near the coffee station that corporate policy didn't allow, served a greater purpose in creating a welcoming space. One particularly revealing moment came when David observed Michael handling a difficult situation. A veteran having what appeared to be a panic attack came into the store during a busy period. Without missing a beat, Michael orchestrated a quiet intervention. He quickly switched registers with another cashier, guided the distressed veteran to the break room, and called a local veterans crisis counselor he knew. The entire incident was handled so smoothly that most customers never noticed anything unusual had occurred. The more David watched, the more he realized that store number 47's success metrics, which were good but not outstanding by corporate standards, told only a fraction of the story. The store's true value couldn't be measured in sales figures or efficiency ratings. It was measured in the lives it touched, the community it supported, and the safety net it provided for veterans who had fallen through the cracks of official support systems. Through careful observation, David also began to understand the precise financial impact of Michael's unofficial program. By his calculations, the store was giving away approximately $200 worth of products each week through various means, a significant amount for a retail location, but minimal compared to the store's overall revenue. More importantly, he noticed that many of the veterans who received help became fiercely loyal customers, often shopping at store number 47 exclusively and encouraging their families and friends to do the same. What struck David most was how Michael had created this system without compromising the store's primary functions. To the average customer, store number 47 was simply a well-run convenience store with exceptionally friendly service. The Veteran Support Network operated like an invisible layer beneath the surface, never disrupting normal operations, but always ready to activate when needed. One evening, as David restocked shelves near closing time, he overheard Michael on the phone, speaking quietly in the break room. "Yes, sir, I understand. No, the apartment isn't available anymore, but I might have something else. Let me make a few calls tonight." "Yes, sir. I remember what it's like. We'll figure something out." After hanging up, Michael spent his entire break making calls, trying to find housing for a veteran who was facing eviction. That moment crystallized something for David. Michael wasn't just running a store, he was operating a vital community resource that the corporate structure of quick-stop markets had never envisioned. The question now wasn't whether this unofficial program should be stopped. It was how it could be supported, expanded and replicated across other locations. On his second-to-last day undercover, an incident occurred that forced David to reconsider everything about how his company operated. The morning had started normally enough. The usual rush of commuters, the familiar rhythm of transactions, the quiet efficiency of Michael's unofficial support system in action. But around mid-morning, a corporate compliance officer named Richard Maxwell arrived for an unscheduled audit. David watched from the beverage aisle as Maxwell, a stern-faced man in his 40s wearing a pressed suit that screamed corporate, began his inspection. He remembered approving these surprise audits himself, seeing them as necessary tools for maintaining standards across all locations. Now, watching Maxwell's methodical examination through new eyes, he felt a growing sense of dread. The tension in the store rose as Maxwell pulled out his tablet, frowning at the numbers. "Your inventory shrinkage is consistently higher than acceptable parameters," he announced to Sarah, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. "And these markdown rates are suspicious. We'll need to review every transaction from the past month." David noticed Michael stiffen behind the counter, though his face remained professionally neutral as he continued serving customers. Maxwell's investigation quickly became more aggressive. He questioned Sarah about every minor policy deviation. The extra chairs by the coffee station, the community bulletin board in the break room, the slightly extended morning hours. Each item was marked as a violation on his tablet, his frown deepening with every tap of his stylus. Then came the moment David had been dreading. Maxwell noticed Michael's filing cabinet behind the counter. "This isn't standard equipment," he declared, reaching for the drawer. Michael stepped forward, his military bearing evident in his straight posture and steady gaze. "Sir, that contains personal employee items," he said firmly. But Maxwell was already pulling the drawer open, revealing the carefully organized records of veteran assistance. "What is this?" Maxwell demanded, lifting out a handful of papers. "Unauthorized discounts? Modified pricing schemes? This is serious. Fraud, Mr. Torres." The color drained from Michael's face, but he stood his ground. "Sir, if you'll let me explain—" But Maxwell was already pulling out his phone. "This requires immediate action. I'm calling loss prevention and HR. Everyone involved in this will need to be terminated immediately. This store will be placed under corporate supervision pending a full investigation." David felt his heart racing. He had planned to reveal his identity the next day, after fully understanding the scope of Michael's program. But watching Maxwell prepare to dismantle everything Michael had built, the support system that helped so many veterans, the community that had formed around. Store No. 47. He knew he couldn't wait. Just then, an elderly veteran that David recognized as Mr. Rodriguez entered the store. The man took in the scene, Michael standing rigidly by his filing cabinet, Maxwell angrily typing on his phone, Sarah looking devastated, and stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone used to command. Maxwell barely glanced up. "This is a corporate matter, sir. Please continue your shopping." But Mr. Rodriguez didn't move. Instead, he drew himself up to his full height, his bearing matching Michael's military posture. "Young man," he said to Maxwell, "do you have any idea what this store means to our veteran community? Do you know how many lives Mr. Torres has helped turn around?" Other customers were gathering now, many of them veterans who had benefited from Michael's unofficial program. The store was becoming crowded with people wanting to speak up for Michael and the store's importance to their community. Maxwell looked increasingly uncomfortable as more veterans stepped forward to share their stories. David watched as an impromptu testimony unfolded. A young veteran spoke about how Michael had helped him find his first civilian job. A veteran's widow described how Store No. 47's unofficial support had helped her family through their darkest days. A former Marine explained how the store had become a lifeline for veterans struggling with PTSD. Looking at Maxwell's bewildered face, David realized that this was the perfect moment. The truth needed to come out now, before this dedicated team and vital community resource could be destroyed by well-meaning but rigid corporate policies. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, removing his store vest. "That's enough, Mr. Maxwell," David said, his CEO voice returning naturally as he stepped into the center of the store. The sudden shift in his demeanor drew all eyes to him. Gone was the uncertain new employee, Daniel Chang. In his place stood David Chen, CEO of Quick Stop Markets. The transformation was so dramatic that several employees gasped audibly. Maxwell's face went through a rapid series of expressions: confusion, recognition, shock, and finally fear. "Mr. Chen, I had no idea you were," he stammered, nearly dropping his tablet. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, and Michael, for the first time since David had met him, looked genuinely rattled. "Everyone please gather around," David announced, his voice carrying the authority of 25 years of leadership. The store had gone completely silent. Customers, employees, and the gathered veterans formed a loose circle, all waiting to hear what would happen next. Even the usual morning rush seemed to pause, as if the store itself was holding its breath. For the past 2 weeks, I've been working here as Daniel Chang, learning about Store No. 47 from the ground up. What I've discovered here isn't fraud or policy violation. It's the very essence of what Quick Stop Markets was meant to be. David moved to stand beside Michael, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Torres hasn't been breaking our company. He's been showing us how to make it better." David turned to face Maxwell, who was still clutching his audit tablet like a shield. "Those inventory discrepancies you're so concerned about, they represent meals for veterans who served our country. That filing cabinet full of unauthorized documents? It's a carefully managed system that's helped dozens of former service members find jobs, housing, and hope." Walking over to the coffee station, David gestured at the non-compliant chairs. "My father, who started this company, used to say that a store isn't just a place to buy things, it's a place where community happens. Somewhere along the way, in our rush to expand and standardize, we forgot that." But Michael remembered. He didn't just remember it, he elevated it to an art form. Sarah had tears in her eyes now, and several of the veterans were nodding solemnly. David continued, his voice growing more passionate. "You want to talk about numbers, Mr. Maxwell? Let me tell you some numbers. In the past year, Store 47 has helped 15 veterans find full-time employment. It's prevented 3 veteran evictions. It's connected dozens of former service members with mental health resources. And it's done all this while maintaining profitable operations and building unshakable customer loyalty. David picked up Maxwell's tablet and deliberately set it aside. As of this moment, I'm announcing some changes. First, the veteran support program at Store No. 47 isn't being shut down. It's being officially recognized and expanded. Michael, he turned to face the still stunned cashier, I want you to help us develop a company-wide veteran support initiative based on what you've built here. The store erupted in applause, but David held up his hand for silence. There's more. Store No. 47 will become our pilot location for a new community-focused business model. Sarah, your creative management in supporting this program is exactly the kind of leadership we need. You're being promoted to Regional Community Engagement Director with a mandate to help other stores implement similar programs. David walked back to the center of the store, looking each person in the eye as he spoke. To everyone who's been part of this, the employees who helped cover extra duties so Michael could help a veteran in crisis, the customers who contributed, to the community fund, the veterans who trusted us with your stories, thank you. You've shown me what quick-stop markets can be, should be, and will be. Finally, he turned to Maxwell, who looked like he wished the floor would swallow him. Ear hole. Mr. Maxwell, I have a new assignment for you too. You're going to work with Michael for the next month, learning every detail of this program. I want you to help us figure out how to implement it across our stores while staying within legal and financial guidelines. We're not going to shut this down. We're going to make it work better. The silence that had held the store in its grip broke. Veterans were hugging Michael, customers were applauding, and Sarah was wiping tears from her eyes. Mr. Rodriguez stepped forward, standing at attention, and offered David a crisp salute, a gesture that was quickly followed by every veteran in the store. As David watched the scene unfold, he realized that his undercover journey had revealed something far more valuable than policy violations or operational inefficiencies. It had shown him the true potential of his parents' legacy, not just as a successful business, but as a force for positive change in the communities it served. The weeks following David's revelation at Store No. 47 brought whirlwind changes to quick-stop markets. David moved his office temporarily to a small space in the back of Store No. 47, working alongside Michael and his team to understand every aspect of the veteran support program. The filing cabinet that had almost gotten Michael fired became the foundation for a company-wide initiative that would change thousands of lives. Michael's transition from cashier to program director was remarkable to watch. His military background proved invaluable as he methodically documented every process, creating detailed guidelines for identifying veterans in need, managing resources, and building community partnerships. What had once been handwritten notes in a hidden drawer became a comprehensive digital database accessible to trained community support coordinators at each store location. Sarah took to her new role with passionate dedication. She traveled to other stores in the region, training managers to spot opportunities for community engagement. It's not just about giving discounts, she would explain in these sessions. It's about creating a space where people feel seen, heard, and supported. Her experiences at Store No. 47 helped her teach others how to balance community service with business operations. The corporate office buzzed with activity as departments scrambled to adapt to the new initiative. Legal worked overtime to create frameworks that would protect both the company and the veterans they served. HR developed new training programs focused on community engagement and veteran support. Even Richard Maxwell, after his month of training with Michael, became one of the program's strongest advocates, using his expertise in corporate compliance to ensure the initiative could expand without compromising business integrity. David watched with pride as store number 47's unofficial practices were transformed into company policy. The Veterans Program discount became a legitimate offer, backed by corporate funds. The community bulletin board evolved into a digital job board accessible across all store locations. The extra chairs by the coffee station, they became standard. Equipment in every store's new community corner. But the most significant changes weren't visible on any spreadsheet or corporate report. They were in the stories that began pouring in from stores across the region. A veteran in Seattle who found housing through the program. A military spouse in Portland who secured a job through the new employment network. A struggling veteran in Tacoma who finally got connected to mental health resources. One morning, about a month after the revelation, David arrived at store 47 to find an elderly veteran waiting to speak with him. The man introduced himself as Colonel James Harrison, retired. "Mr. Chen," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been shopping here for years, benefiting from Michael's kindness. But what you've done, taking his vision and expanding, it's going to save lives, mark my words." The colonel shared how he'd watched young veterans in his community struggle with the transition to civilian life. "It's not just about the discounts or the jobs," he explained. "It's about having a place where they feel understood, where they don't have to explain themselves. Every Quick Stop store can now be that place." The program's success began attracting attention beyond the company. Local news stations ran stories about the initiative. Veterans organizations reached out to establish partnerships. Other retailers started inquiring about implementing similar programs. David found himself speaking at business conferences, sharing how a cashier's secret acts of kindness had transformed his understanding of corporate responsibility. Michael's filing cabinet remained in store number 47, now displayed prominently behind the counter as a reminder of where it all began. But it was no longer filled with secret records of unofficial help. Instead, it contained letters, hundreds of them, from veterans and their families, sharing how the program had impacted their lives. Perhaps the most powerful validation came 6 months after the program's official launch. David received an invitation to speak at a National Veterans Support Conference. As he stood at the podium, looking out at an audience filled with service members and veteran advocates, he saw something that made his heart swell with pride. In the front row sat Michael Torres, wearing a crisp suit instead of his quick-stop vest, ready to present the next session on community-based veteran support programs. The transformation wasn't just about business metrics or corporate initiatives. It was about returning to the values that had built quick-stop markets in the first place. His parents' belief that a store could be more than just a place to buy things. It could be a cornerstone of the community, a place where people found not just what they needed, but who they needed. 1 year after David's undercover discovery, quick-stop markets had become more than just a convenience store chain. It had evolved into a model for corporate social responsibility. The Veteran Support Program, now officially named Operation Community Shield, had expanded to all 100-plus locations, but its heart remained at store number 47, where it all began. The transformation was evident in both big and small ways. Every Quick Stop store now featured a dedicated Veterans Resource Center, a quiet space equipped with computers for job searches, information about local resources, and a trained community support coordinator. The simple filing cabinet system Michael had created had evolved into a sophisticated network that connected veterans with employment opportunities, housing resources, and support services across the entire Pacific Northwest. David made it a point to visit store number 47 regularly, no longer as an undercover boss, but as a proud leader witnessing the continued impact of Michael's vision. On this particular morning, he arrived to find the store humming with a different kind of energy. A group of business students from the University of Washington was there to study the program's success, shadowing Michael as he explained how the initiative worked. The key, Michael was telling them, pointing to a wall of success stories that had replaced the old corporate promotional posters, is understanding that every person who walks through those doors has a story. Our job isn't just to ring up their purchases, it's to be part of their story in a meaningful way. The students scribbled notes frantically as Michael shared statistics. Employee retention had improved by 45% across all stores since the program's implementation. Customer loyalty metrics had shot up by 60%, but more importantly, over 2,000 veterans had found employment through the Quick Stop network in the past year alone. Sarah, who now oversaw community engagement for the entire Pacific Northwest region, joined the discussion. She had just returned from opening a new store in Boise, Idaho, where the Veteran Support Program had been integrated from day one. "We're not just selling convenience anymore," she explained to the students. "We're selling hope, dignity, and community." David watched as Mr. Rodriguez, now employed as a part-time community coordinator, led a morning support group in the store's community room. The elderly veteran who had once been too proud to accept help was now helping others navigate their own challenges. Through the glass walls, David could see heads nodding in understanding, hands reaching out in support, and faces lighting up with newfound hope. The corporate culture had shifted dramatically too. Richard Maxwell, once the strict enforcer of rigid policies, had become the program's biggest champion in the corporate office. He had created a new compliance framework that measured success, not just in dollars and cents, but in lives impacted and communities strengthened. "Remember when you almost shut us down?" Michael teased Maxwell during a recent training session. The former compliance officer had laughed, shaking his head. "Best mistake I never made," he replied, before turning serious. "You taught me that. Sometimes the most valuable things in business can't be measured in a traditional audit." The program's success had attracted attention from unexpected places. Military transition programs began referring veterans to Quick Stop for employment opportunities. Other retail chains sent representatives to learn from their model. Even government agencies reached out to study how a convenience store chain had created such an effective community support network. But perhaps the most meaningful validation came from the veterans themselves. The store now hosted weekly networking, events where veterans helped other veterans. Job fairs in the parking lot had become monthly occurrences. The coffee station, with its non-compliant chairs that had once bothered corporate auditors, had become a gathering place where veterans found friendship and understanding. David's parents, now in their 80s, had visited store number 47 to see the program in action. His father, who had built the first Quick Stop store with dreams of serving his community, had tears in his eyes as he watched veterans helping veterans, employees going above and beyond, and customers becoming part of a larger family. "This," his father had said, gesturing to the bustling store, "this is exactly what we dreamed of. Not just success in business, but success in making a difference." One particular incident stood out in David's memory. A young veteran, recently returned from deployment, had walked into store 47 looking lost and overwhelmed. Within minutes, Michael had connected him with Mr. Rodriguez, who recognized the signs of someone struggling with the transition to civilian life. By the end of the day, the young man had a job interview scheduled, information about housing assistance, and most importantly, a support network of people who understood what he was going through. 18 months after David's undercover journey, Quick Stop Market celebrated the opening of its 150th store. The grand opening was unlike any in the company's history. Instead of the traditional ribbon-cutting ceremony, the event began with a salute from a color guard of local veterans. Michael Torres, Now the National Director of Veteran Services for Quick Stop Markets stood proudly alongside David as they welcomed the community to what had become much more than just another convenience store. The new location, like all Quick Stoppy stores now, had been built with community service in mind. The layout, refined through countless consultations with veteran groups and community leaders, included dedicated spaces for support meetings, job training, and resource coordination. The store's manager was a veteran herself, trained through the company's new leadership development program that Michael had helped design. During the opening ceremony, David shared a story that brought tears to many eyes. He spoke about a letter he had received from a veteran's wife the previous week. Her husband, struggling with PTSD, had found purpose again through the Quick Stop Veteran Employment Program. She wrote that for the first time in years, he was excited to go to work, David told the crowd. She said it wasn't just about the job. It was about belonging somewhere, about being part of something bigger than himself. The company's transformation had exceeded even David's most optimistic expectations. The Veteran Support Program had evolved into a comprehensive community development initiative. Each store now served as a hub for various support services, from job placement to mental health resources. The unofficial discounts that Michael had once secretly provided were now part of a formal benefits program that served thousands of veterans and their families. Sarah Martinez, who had risen to become the company's executive vice president of community relations, had implemented training programs that ensured every Quick Stop employee understood their role in supporting veterans. We're not just training people to operate registers or stock shelves, she would explain in orientation sessions. We're training them to recognize when someone needs help, to understand the unique challenges veterans face, and to know how to connect them with resources. Richard Maxwell, the former compliance officer who had almost shut down the program, now headed a new department dedicated to measuring and expanding the company's social impact. His quarterly reports included not just financial metrics, but also detailed analyses of lives impacted, jobs created, and communities strengthened. His latest report showed that Quick Stop's Veteran Support Network had helped over 5,000 veterans find employment and provided assistance to more than 15,000 military families. The original store number 47 had become something of a pilgrimage site for corporate leaders studying social responsibility. Business schools sent students to study their model, and government agencies consulted with them on veteran support programs. The store's community room, where it had all started, now displayed hundreds of photos and letters from veterans whose lives had been touched by the program. Mr. Rodriguez, who had stood up for Michael during the confrontation with Maxwell, now served as a senior advisor to the program. His experience as both a veteran and a beneficiary of the original support system made him invaluable in helping expand the initiative. When I first came to this store, he often told new employees, I was too proud to ask for help, but Michael and this program showed me that accepting help isn't weakness. It's how we build stronger communities. The impact extended far beyond the veterans themselves. Regular customers had embraced the store's new mission, often contributing to community initiatives or volunteering at veteran events. Local businesses partnered with Quick Stop locations to provide job opportunities and additional resources. The stores had become gathering places where people from all walks of life came together to support one another. David's parents, watching their small family business evolve into a force for social change, couldn't have been prouder. Their original vision of a store that served its community had grown into something they never could have imagined. The simple values they had instilled in their son, treating everyone with dignity, giving back to the community, and standing up for those in need, had become the foundation of a movement that was changing thousands of lives. 2 years. After his undercover experience, David found himself back at store 47, this time for a very special occasion. The store was celebrating its 20th anniversary, but more importantly, it was hosting the first national conference of Quick Stop's veterans. Support network. Store managers, veteran coordinators and community partners from all 150 locations had gathered to share experiences, learn from each other, and plan for the future. The store looked very different from the day David had first walked in as Daniel Chang. The original filing cabinet remained in its place of honor, but it was now surrounded by wall-to-wall success stories, photographs, letters, and news clippings documenting the lives that had been changed. The once quiet coffee station had evolved into a bustling community hub, and the non-compliant chairs had multiplied into comfortable seating areas throughout the store. Michael Torres, dressed in a sharp suit but wearing his familiar warm smile, was leading a workshop on community engagement. "Remember," he told the gathered managers, "every veteran who walks through our doors carries invisible battles. Our job isn't just to sell products, it's to provide a safe harbor where they can find their footing again." The managers, many of them veterans themselves, nodded in understanding. In the community room, Sarah Martinez was presenting the latest expansion plans. The program had grown beyond anyone's expectations, and Quickstop was now partnering with veteran organizations across the country. "We're not just a convenience store chain anymore," she explained, pointing to a map dotted with locations. "We're building a nationwide support network, one store at a time." Richard Maxwell, once the program's unwitting antagonist, now led sessions on measuring social impact. His presentations were filled with impressive statistics. Over 10,000 veterans employed, more than 20,000 families assisted, countless lives touched. But he always emphasized that the real success stories couldn't be captured in numbers alone. During a break in the proceedings, David found himself standing beside the original filing cabinet with Mr. Rodriguez. The elderly veteran, now a respected mentor in the program, ran his hand along the worn metal. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "when Michael first started helping us, we thought he was just being kind. We never imagined it would grow into all this." The conference had drawn attention from unexpected quarters. Representatives from other retail chains were there to learn from Quickstop's example. Government officials studied their model for potential nationwide implementation. Even international visitors had come to understand how a simple act of kindness had transformed into a movement. One of the most moving moments came when a young veteran took the stage. She'd been one of the first people helped by the expanded program, and now she managed her own Quickstop store. "When I came home from deployment," she shared, her voice thick with emotion, "I felt lost. But walking into a Quickstop store, being recognized not just as a customer, but as a fellow veteran, having people who understood what I was going through, it saved my life." David's parents, now in their mid-80s, sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Their small family business had evolved beyond their wildest dreams, but it had stayed true to their core values. The principle of treating every customer like family had grown into a nationwide support system for those who had served their country. The conference also served as a planning session for the future. New initiatives were being launched: a scholarship program for veterans' children, a mental health support network, and partnerships with housing organizations. Each store was becoming not just a retail location, but a community resource center. Late in the afternoon, David found himself alone in the store's break room, where he had first learned about Michael's secret support system. The room had been renovated and expanded, but the essence remained the same: a safe space where people could find help and hope. On the wall hung a framed photo from that pivotal day when he had revealed his identity, capturing the moment when everything changed. The final day of the conference brought an announcement that would cement Quick-Stop Market's commitment to veteran support for generations to come. Standing before the assembled crowd in Store 47's expanded community center, David revealed the establishment of the Quick-Stop Veterans Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to expanding their support programs beyond the stores themselves. 2 years ago, David began, his voice carrying the weight of emotion, I stood in this store and learned what true service means. Today, we are ensuring that the spirit of what Michael Torres started will continue to grow and touch lives long into the future. The foundation would be funded with an initial endowment of $50 million drawn from company profits and private donations from business partners who had witnessed the program's success. Michael, who would serve as the foundation's first executive director while maintaining his role with Quick-Stop, outlined the ambitious plans. The foundation would focus on 3 key areas: education support for veterans and their families, housing, assistance programs, and mental health resources. But perhaps most importantly, it would work to replicate the Store 47 model of community support in other retail environments. What we've built here isn't just about Quick-Stop, Michael explained, gesturing to the walls covered with success stories. It's about showing the business world that profit and purpose can go hand in hand, that when you invest in your community, everyone benefits. The foundation would offer grants and consulting services to other businesses looking to implement similar veteran support programs. Sarah Martinez presented research showing how the program had transformed not just veterans' lives, but entire communities. Crime rates had dropped in neighborhoods around Quick-Stop locations. Property values had increased. Other businesses had been inspired to launch their own community support initiatives. The ripple effects of their work extended far beyond the veteran community. Richard Maxwell, who had once wielded his audit tablet like a weapon, now presented a different kind of report. His team had documented how the Veteran Support Program had actually improved Quick-Stop's bottom line. Employee turnover had plummeted, customer loyalty had soared, and the positive publicity had led to increased sales across all locations. We proved that doing good is good business, he declared proudly. During the lunch break, David noticed a group of young veterans gathered around the original filing cabinet, listening as Mr. Rodriguez shared stories from the early days. This cabinet, the elderly veteran explained, represents something powerful. The idea that one person's compassion can spark a movement. The young veterans nodded, some wiping away tears as they related their own experiences with the program. The afternoon sessions focused on the future. Store managers shared innovative ideas for expanding their support services. A new mobile app was unveiled that would help veterans locate Quick-Stop resources and connect with support networks. Plans were discussed for partnerships with veteran-owned businesses and suppliers. One particularly moving presentation came from Lisa Chen, the cashier who had worked alongside Michael in those early days. Now a regional trainer for the Veteran Support Program, she spoke about the transformation she had witnessed. We used to think we were just bending the rules to help people, she said. Now we're changing the rules to make helping people our primary mission. The conference concluded with a ceremony honoring the original 47, the employees who had been part of Store 47's unofficial support network before it became a formal program. Each received a commemorative pin featuring the store's number and a quote that had become the program's unofficial motto: "Every store a sanctuary, every veteran a friend." As the day wound down, David found himself standing outside Store 47, with Michael watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Did you ever imagine," he asked his friend and now trusted advisor, "that your secret filing cabinet would lead to all this?" 3 years to the day after David's undercover journey, Quick-Stop Markets celebrated a milestone that would have seemed impossible in the days when Michael Torres was secretly helping veterans from behind his register. The company opened its 200th store, but this opening was different from any that had come before. Located near a major military base in San Diego, the new store had been designed from the ground up with veteran support as its primary mission. The grand opening ceremony brought together faces both familiar and new. Michael Torres, now a nationally recognized advocate for veteran support in the business sector, stood proudly beside David as they cut the ribbon. But instead of the traditional grand opening banner, the store's entrance displayed a different message. Welcome home, veterans. The new location showcased how far the program had evolved. The store featured a dedicated career center with full-time employment counselors, a mental health support office staffed by licensed professionals, and a community space that could accommodate up to 100 people for support groups and training sessions. The retail operation, while still efficient and profitable, had become just one part of a larger mission. When I think back to those early days at Store 47, Michael shared, during his opening remarks, I remember feeling like I was breaking rules just to do what was right. Now, doing what's right is the rule. His words resonated with the gathered crowd, which included veterans who had been helped by the original program, corporate leaders who had embraced the vision, and community partners who had helped make it all possible. Sarah Martinez, who had risen to become Quick-Stop's chief community officer, presented the latest impact report. The numbers were staggering. Over 25,000 veterans employed through their network, more than 50,000 families assisted with various support services, and countless lives touched by the ripple effects of their work. But she emphasized that the real measure of their success couldn't be captured in statistics. Every morning, she explained, veterans walk into our stores across the country knowing they'll find more than just groceries. They'll find understanding, support, and opportunities. That's the true legacy of what started in store number 47. The audience nodded in agreement, many wiping away tears as they remembered their own experiences with the program. Richard Maxwell, now heading the company's social impact division, had developed new metrics for measuring success that went beyond traditional business indicators. His team tracked not just employment numbers and financial assistance provided, but also the long-term stability of the veterans they helped, the strengthening of community bonds, and the multiplication effect as helped veterans became helpers themselves. The new store's manager was a testament to this multiplication effect. James Connor had been one of the first veterans helped by Michael's unofficial program at Store 47. Now, after working his way up through the company, he was leading this flagship location, ready to pay forward the support he had received. When I walked into Store number 47 5 years ago, he shared, I was lost, struggling, and out of hope. Today, I get to be the person Michael was for me, someone who sees beyond the surface and reaches out with real help. The store's design incorporated lessons learned from years of serving the veteran community. The lighting was adjustable to accommodate those sensitive to bright lights due to PTSD. Quiet spaces were available for veterans who needed a moment to decompress. Even the product layout had been carefully considered to create a comfortable, navigable environment for those with physical disabilities. The Quick-Stop Veterans Foundation, now in its second year of operation, had already begun to extend its impact beyond the company's own stores. Other retailers had started implementing similar programs with the foundation's guidance and support. The Store 47 model was being studied in business schools as an example of how companies could successfully integrate social mission with business operations. Mr. Rodriguez, now in his late 70s but still actively involved as a mentor, watched the proceedings with pride. The elderly veteran who had once been too proud to accept help was now one of the program's most effective advocates. "You know what makes this special?" he asked a group of young veterans touring the facility. "It's not just about giving help, it's about giving hope. When you have hope, you can rebuild anything." As Quick Stop's veteran support program continued to grow, it was the individual stories that kept the mission alive and meaningful. On a quiet morning at store number 47, now designated as a national training center for the program, David sat down with a group of veterans to hear their experiences. These storytelling sessions had become a crucial part of training new store managers, helping them understand the real impact of their work. Mark Thompson, a former Marine, shared how he had stumbled into store number 47 on what he later admitted was one of the darkest days of his life. "I had been out of the service for 6 months, he recalled, his voice steady but emotional. "Couldn't hold a job, couldn't sleep at night, couldn't see a way forward. I came in just to buy a cup of coffee. But Michael, he saw something in my eyes that I couldn't even see myself." That day had marked the beginning of his journey back. Now, 3 years later, Mark managed his own Quick Stop store in Portland, where he helped other veterans find their way. Jennifer Ramirez, a former Army medic, described how the program had helped her transition from military to civilian life. "It wasn't just about finding a job," she explained. "It was about finding a purpose again." Through Quick Stop's education support program, she had completed her nursing degree while working at the store. Now she volunteered at the store's health resource center, helping other veterans navigate medical challenges and access healthcare services. The conference room where they gathered was lined with photographs, hundreds of them, each telling a similar story of transformation. David noticed how the veterans would often pause by these photos, touching them gently, recognizing faces or seeing reflections of their own journeys. The wall had become known as the Wall of Hope, a testament to the program's lasting impact. Sarah Martinez had implemented a new initiative called Veterans' Voices, where these stories were recorded and shared across the Quick Stop network. "Every story matters," she emphasized during training sessions. "Every veteran who walks through our doors carries a unique experience, and understanding these stories helps us serve them better." Richard Maxwell, who had once seen only numbers on a spreadsheet, now started each corporate presentation with a veteran's story. "These aren't just feel-good moments," he would explain to business partners. "These stories represent real, measurable impact on our communities." His latest report included detailed case studies showing how individual success stories created ripple effects throughout entire neighborhoods. The impact of these personal stories extended beyond the veteran community. Regular customers often commented on how the presence of the program had changed their perspective on military service and community support. Local businesses, inspired by Quick Stop's example, had begun implementing their own veteran support initiatives. Schools invited veteran program participants to speak to students about service, resilience, and community. Michael Torres, despite his elevated position in the company, still made time to work behind the counter at store number 47 once a month. "This is where the real work happens," he would say. "This is where we meet people face to face, where we can see when someone needs help, where we can make an immediate difference." His presence reminded everyone that no position was too high to engage directly with the veterans they served. One particularly powerful story came from Lisa Chen, who had witnessed the program's evolution from its secret beginnings. She described how the store had become a lifeline for a young veteran and his family during a severe winter storm. The power was out across the city, but store number 47, with its emergency generators, stayed open. "We became more than a store that night," she recalled. We were a warm place, a safe place, a place where people could find help when they needed it most. The stories weren't all about dramatic transformations or crisis moments. Many were about small daily acts of kindness that added up to significant change. A veteran finding companionship during morning coffee, a military spouse connecting with support resources, a struggling service member discovering they weren't alone. 5 years after David's undercover experience, Quick-Stop Markets had become more than just a success story in business journals. It had become a blueprint for how companies could serve their communities while maintaining profitability. The transformation that had started with one cashier's secret acts of kindness had sparked a movement that extended far beyond retail. On a crisp autumn morning, David stood before a packed auditorium at the National Veterans Support Conference in Washington, D.C. The audience included business leaders, government officials, and veteran advocates from across the country. But the guests of honor were the original team from store number 47, Michael Torres, Sarah Martinez, Richard Maxwell, and Mr. Rodriguez, each now a leader in their own right in the veteran support community. 5 years ago, David began, his voice carrying the weight of countless stories and experiences, I thought I was going undercover to learn about store operations. Instead, I discovered something far more valuable. I learned what it truly means to serve. He shared how that discovery had led to the creation of not just a corporate program, but a movement that had transformed thousands of lives. The numbers were impressive. 250 quick-stop locations across the country, each serving as a veteran support hub. Over 50,000 veterans employed through their network. More than 100,000 families assisted, millions of dollars in educational support and housing assistance distributed through the Quick-Stop Veterans Foundation. But as always, the real impact lay in the individual stories. Michael Torres, now a nationally recognized expert in veteran support programs, took the stage to announce Quick-Stop's most ambitious initiative yet, the creation of the National Center for Veteran Support and Integration. The center, to be built adjacent to the original store number 47, would serve as a training facility and research hub for companies looking to implement similar programs. We're not just creating a program anymore, Michael explained. His military bearing still evident in his posture. We're creating a new standard for how businesses can serve their communities. The center would include state-of-the-art training facilities, research labs for studying program effectiveness, and spaces for veteran support organizations to collaborate and share resources. Sarah Martinez presented the results of a 5-year impact study that showed how the program had affected not just veterans, but entire communities. Crime rates had dropped in areas around Quick-Stop locations. Property values had increased. Other businesses had been inspired to launch their own community support initiatives. The ripple effects extended far beyond the veteran community. Richard Maxwell, whose attempted audit had nearly shut down the program in its early days, now led a team dedicated to helping other companies implement similar initiatives. We've proven that doing good is good business, he declared, presenting data that showed how Quick-Stop's veteran focus had actually improved their bottom line through increased customer loyalty, reduced employee turnover, and positive brand recognition. Mr. Rodriguez, now in his 80s, but still active in the program, received a standing ovation when he shared his perspective on the program's evolution. When Michael first helped me years ago, I thought he was just being kind, the elderly veteran recalled. Now I understand he was starting a revolution in how businesses can serve their communities. The conference concluded with the announcement of Quick-Stop's next phase of expansion. Partnerships with other retail chains to create a nationwide network of veteran support locations. The goal was ambitious, to ensure that no veteran would ever be more than 30 minutes away from a support hub, whether it was a Quick-Stop store or a partner location. The impact of Quickstop's veteran support program had extended far beyond anything David could have imagined during those first days undercover at Store 47. As he sat in his office, now located in the newly completed National Center for Veteran Support and Integration, he reflected on how a simple act of kindness had grown into a movement that was changing the face of corporate social responsibility. The center itself was a testament to how far they'd come. Built on land adjacent to Store Number 47, the modern facility served as both a training hub and a living laboratory for community support initiatives. The main lobby featured the original filing cabinet from Store 47, now encased in glass like a museum piece, with Michael's handwritten notes and records preserved as a reminder of where it all began. Every morning, David would walk through the center's halls, watching as veteran support coordinators from other companies attended training sessions, researchers studied program outcomes, and community organizations collaborated on new initiatives. The building hummed with purpose, much like Store Number 47 had on that first morning he'd walked in as Daniel Chang. Today was particularly special. Quickstop was hosting its first international conference on corporate veteran support programs. Representatives from companies across the globe had come to learn how a convenience store chain had created such an effective model for community engagement. The conference center was filled with business leaders, government officials, and veteran advocates from as far away as Australia and the United Kingdom. Michael Torres, now a sought-after speaker on corporate social responsibility, opened the conference with a presentation that traced the program's evolution from his secret filing cabinet to the comprehensive support network it had become. What started as one person trying to help veterans in need, he explained, has grown into a movement that's changing how businesses think about their role in society. Sarah Martinez followed with a detailed analysis of how the program had transformed. Quickstop's corporate culture. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high, turnover had dropped to industry-leading lows, and the company consistently ranked among the best places to work in America. When you give people a purpose beyond profit, she explained, they become invested in something larger than themselves. Richard Maxwell, whose attempted audit had nearly ended the program before it could begin, now led sessions on how to integrate social impact initiatives into traditional business models. The old way of thinking saw community support as a cost center, he told the assembled executives. We've proven it's an investment that pays dividends in both social and financial terms. The afternoon sessions featured success stories from veterans whose lives had been changed by the program. A former Marine who had found not just employment but a new purpose in life. A veteran's widow who had received support when she needed it most. A young service member who had transitioned successfully to civilian life through Quickstop's training programs. Mr. Rodriguez, now serving as a senior advisor to the program, shared his perspective on how the initiative had transformed not just individual lives but entire communities. We're not just helping veterans, he explained. We're helping families, neighborhoods, and cities. When you lift up one person, you lift up everyone around them. The day's most powerful moment came when David unveiled Quickstop's next major initiative, the Veterans Future Fund. The company would commit $100 million over the next 5 years to expand their support programs, fund veteran entrepreneurship initiatives, and help other companies implement similar programs. This isn't just about Quickstop anymore, David announced. This is about creating a new standard for how businesses can serve their communities. A decade after David's undercover journey at Store Number 47, Quickstop Markets had become synonymous with corporate social responsibility and veteran support. The company now operated over 500 locations across the country, each one serving as a hub for veteran services and community support. But on this particular morning, David found himself back where it all began, preparing for a very special ceremony. Store number 47 was being designated as a national landmark in corporate social responsibility, the first retail location to receive such recognition. The store had been renovated and expanded over the years, but certain elements remained unchanged, including the spot where Michael's filing cabinet had once stood, now marked with a commemorative plaque that read, "Where compassion met commerce." The ceremony brought together faces both old and new. Michael Torres, whose simple acts of kindness had sparked a revolution in corporate responsibility, stood beside David as they prepared to unveil the landmark designation. Though his hair had grayed and his face showed the passage of time, his eyes still held the same warmth and determination that had characterized his early days as a cashier. Sarah Martinez, now CEO of her own consulting firm, specializing in corporate community engagement, had returned to share how the store number 47 model had influenced businesses worldwide. Her firm had helped implement similar programs in companies across 6 continents, affecting millions of lives. What started in this store, she remarked during her speech, has become a global movement for change. Richard Maxwell, who had nearly shut down the program during his infamous audit, now led the National Institute for Corporate Social Responsibility, an organization he had founded to help businesses integrate community support into their operations. "I came to store number 47 looking for policy violations," he recalled with a smile. "Instead, I found a new way of thinking about business and community." The store itself had evolved into something far beyond its original scope. The retail operation was still there, efficiently serving customers as always, but it was now surrounded by a comprehensive support center. Veterans could access employment services, mental health resources, educational opportunities, and housing assistance all under one roof. The coffee station, where Michael had first noticed struggling veterans, now hosted regular support group meetings and networking events. Mr. Rodriguez, now in his 90s but still sharp as ever, attended the ceremony as a guest of honor. The elderly veteran who had once been too proud to accept help had become a powerful advocate for veteran support programs. His story and his transformation from recipient to provider of help had inspired countless others to both seek and offer assistance. During the ceremony, David announced the establishment of the Store number 47 Fellowship Program, a new initiative that would train the next generation of corporate social responsibility leaders. "This store showed us that business success and social impact aren't mutually exclusive," he explained. "Through this fellowship, we'll ensure that lesson continues to shape corporate America for generations to come." The impact of Store number 47's legacy could be seen in the faces of those attending the ceremony. Veterans whose lives had been changed by the program stood alongside corporate executives who had implemented similar initiatives in their own companies. Community leaders shared stories of how the program had transformed their neighborhoods, while government officials discussed how it had influenced public policy on veteran support. Lisa Chen, one of the original employees who had witnessed Michael's early efforts to help veterans, now directed Quick Stop's national training program. "We don't just teach people how to run a store," she explained to a group of new managers. "We teach them how to build a community, how to recognize need, and how to make a real difference in people's lives." 10 years to the day after David first walked into store number 47 as Daniel Chang, Quick Stop Markets held a special anniversary celebration that brought together everyone who had been part of this remarkable journey. The event wasn't held in a corporate conference center or luxury hotel. It was held right where it all began, in the expanded community space of Store number 47, now a bustling hub of veteran support and community engagement. The store had been transformed for the occasion. Photos and memorabilia from the past decade lined the walls, telling the story of how one cashier's compassion had sparked a nationwide movement. Michael's original filing cabinet, now a cherished piece of corporate history, had been temporarily moved from its display case to its original spot behind the counter, a powerful symbol of how far they'd come while staying true to their roots. David began the celebration with a revelation that brought tears to many eyes. He announced that store number 47 would be renamed the Michael Torres Veterans Support Center, ensuring that the man who had started it all would be forever remembered. Michael, typically composed and professional, found himself overwhelmed with emotion as he stood before the gathering of colleagues, veterans, and community members who had become family over the years. 10 years ago, David addressed the crowd, I thought I was coming to inspect a store. Instead, I discovered the heart of what business should be. Michael didn't just help veterans, he showed us all what it means to truly serve our community. The audience, which included veterans who had been helped by the program, employees who had witnessed its growth, and business leaders who had implemented similar initiatives, nodded in understanding. Sarah Martinez presented a comprehensive impact report that showed the program's reach over the decade. Over 100,000 veterans employed, more than 250,000 families assisted, and countless lives touched through their expanding network of support services. But as always, she emphasized that the real measure of success wasn't in the numbers. It was in the individual stories of lives transformed. Richard Maxwell, whose attempted audit had nearly ended the program before it could flourish, shared how his perspective on business success had been completely transformed. I came here looking for policy violations, he admitted. But what I found was a new way of measuring corporate success, not just in profits, but in lives changed and communities strengthened. The celebration included testimonials from veterans who had been part of the program throughout its evolution. One particularly moving moment came when a young veteran, now a successful business owner, described how store number 47 had saved his life during his darkest days after leaving the service. This wasn't just a store, he said, his voice thick with emotion. This was a lighthouse when I was lost at sea. Mr. Rodriguez, now requiring assistance to walk but still sharp as ever, received a standing ovation when he took the stage. The elderly veteran who had once been too proud to accept help had become one of the program's most powerful advocates. Sometimes, he reflected, the greatest strength is knowing when to accept help, and the greatest honor is being able to help others in turn. Throughout the day, current and former employees shared stories of how the program had changed not just the lives of veterans, but their own perspectives on business and community service. Lisa Chen, who had witnessed Michael's early efforts to help veterans, described how the program had transformed her understanding of what a business could be. We stopped being just a store, she explained, and became a mission with a store attached. As the celebration of Store 47's transformation continued into the evening, the focus shifted from commemorating the past to envisioning the future. David introduced a group of young professionals who represented the next generation of Quick Stops, a veteran support program, the first graduates of the Store 47 Fellowship Program, now ready to implement similar initiatives across the country. Among them was James Wilson, a former Marine who had first entered Store 47 as a struggling veteran 5 years ago. Now, with an MBA and specialized training in corporate social responsibility, he was preparing to launch a veteran support hub in Chicago. When I first walked into this store, he shared with the gathered crowd, I was looking for a cup of coffee. Instead, I found a future. Now I get to help create that future for others. The fellowship graduates represented a diverse cross-section of backgrounds, veterans, military family members, and civilians passionate about veteran support. Each had spent a year learning the intricacies of the Store 47 model, not just studying its business aspects, but absorbing its fundamental philosophy of combining commerce with compassion. Sarah Martinez, who had helped design the fellowship curriculum, explained how the program had evolved beyond its retail origins. "We're not just teaching people how to run a store that helps veterans," she explained. "We're creating leaders who understand how to transform any business into a force for positive change in their community." Michael Torres, still actively involved in training despite his elevated position, had personally mentored each fellow. "The filing cabinet behind the counter was just the beginning," he told them during their graduation ceremony. "Your challenge is to take these principles and adapt them for the next decade, the next generation of veterans, the next set of challenges we haven't even anticipated yet." The evening's program included presentations from the fellows about their vision for the future. One planned to adapt the model for rural communities where veterans often struggled to access services. Another had developed a technology platform to connect veteran support networks across different businesses and organizations. A third had created a blueprint for implementing similar programs in industries beyond retail. Richard Maxwell, watching these presentations with evident pride, reflected on how far the program had come from the days when he had seen it as a threat to corporate policy. "These young leaders aren't just continuing what we started," he observed. "They're reimagining it, expanding it, making it even more effective and far-reaching than we could have dreamed." The fellows had already begun making their mark. During their training year, they had collectively implemented dozens of improvements to the existing program. They had developed new ways to identify veterans in need, created more efficient systems for connecting them with resources, and designed innovative approaches to measuring program impact. Lisa Chen, who had helped train the fellows in customer service and community engagement, noted how they brought fresh perspectives to long-standing challenges. "They understand things we never thought about," she explained. "They see opportunities we missed. They're taking what worked about Store No. 47 and making it work for a new era." "Sometimes," he reflected, "the greatest strength is knowing when to accept help, and the greatest honor is being able to help others in turn." Throughout the day, current and former employees shared stories of how the program had changed not just the lives of veterans, but their own perspectives on business and community service. Lisa Chen, who had witnessed Michael's early efforts to help veterans, described how the program had transformed her understanding of what a business could be. "We stopped being just a store," she explained, "and became a mission with a store attached." As the celebration of Store No. 47's transformation continued into the evening, the focus shifted from commemorating the past to envisioning the future. David introduced a group of young professionals who represented the next generation of Quick Stop's Veteran Support Program, the first graduates of the Store No. 47 Fellowship Program, now ready to implement similar initiatives across the country. Among them was James Wilson, a former Marine who had first entered Store No. 47 as a struggling veteran 5 years ago. Now, with an MBA and specialized training in corporate social responsibility, he was preparing to launch a veteran support hub in Chicago. "When I first walked into this store," he shared with the gathered crowd, "I was looking for a cup of coffee. Instead, I found a future. Now, I get to help create that future for others." The fellowship graduates represented a diverse cross-section of backgrounds: veterans, military family members, and civilians passionate about veteran support. Each had spent a year learning the intricacies of the Store No. 47 model, not just studying its business aspects, but absorbing its fundamental philosophy of combining commerce with compassion. Sarah Martinez, who had helped design the fellowship curriculum, explained how the program had evolved beyond its retail origins. "We're not just teaching people how to run a store that helps veterans," she explained. "We're creating leaders who understand how to transform any business into a force for positive change in their community." Michael Torres, still actively involved in training despite his elevated position, had personally mentored each fellow. The filing cabinet behind the counter was just the beginning, he told them during their graduation ceremony. Your challenge is to take these principles and adapt them for the next decade, the next generation of veterans, the next set of challenges we haven't even anticipated yet. The evening's program included presentations from the fellows about their vision for the future. One planned to adapt the model for rural communities where veterans often struggled to access services. Another had developed a technology platform to connect veteran support networks across different businesses and organizations. A third had created a blueprint for implementing similar programs in industries beyond retail. Richard Maxwell, watching these presentations with evident pride, reflected on how far the program had come from the days when he had seen it as a threat to corporate policy. These young leaders aren't just continuing what we started, he observed. They're reimagining it, expanding it, making it even more effective and far-reaching than we could have dreamed. The fellows had already begun making their mark. During their training year, they had collectively implemented dozens of improvements to the existing program. They had developed new ways to identify veterans in need, created more efficient systems for connecting them with resources, and designed innovative approaches to measuring program impact. Lisa Chen, who had helped train the fellows in customer service and community engagement, noted how they brought fresh perspectives to long-standing challenges. They understand things we never thought about, she explained. They see opportunities we missed. They're taking what worked about store number 47 and making it work for a new era.